The journey from an idea to a breakthrough is where science lives and breathes. Welcome to What's the Formula, our new series where leaders across science and medicine share insights about the formula for success in areas that will help us forge scientific breakthroughs. I'm Jane Wu, and we're here today at AbbVie with a few of our scientific leaders in the field of precision medicine. Over the past 2 decades, precision medicine has revolutionized how cancer patients are diagnosed and treated. By tailoring treatment to a specific disease driver and taking into account a person's genes, environment, and lifestyle, researchers can target the right patients with the right medicine at the right time. But what if precision medicine could be leveraged to help fight diseases other than cancer? The stage has been set for precision medicine to go beyond cancer. Lessons learned from oncology and recent advances in genomics, proteomics, data analytics, and other fields have created new opportunities for precision medicine. And that's what we plan to talk about on today's edition of What's the Formula? Joining us today in studio and from across the country are 4 AbbVie leaders in precision medicine. Anita Bethina, a scientist with a doctorate in pharmacology, she currently serves as Executive Director and Head of Precision Medicine Oncology. Heath Gay, a scientist with a doctorate in immunology and currently serves as Senior Director of Precision Medicine Immunology. Ken Emancipator is a physician by training and recently joined AbbVie as Executive Director and Head of Precision Medicine Companion Diagnostics Development. And finally, Ian McCaffrey, a leading scientist with more than 2 decades of experience. He currently serves as the Vice President and Head of Precision Medicine and Companion Diagnostics at AbbVie. Before today's event, we asked you on our event page, which field do you think is leading the next wave in precision medicine? Based on your responses, the majority of our audience believes that immunology is leading that next wave, followed by neuroscience. Throughout today's program, we'll feature your thoughts and questions for our panelists, so please join the conversation by posting them in the comments section. Welcome, and thank you all for being here. We're excited to get started. And thanks to Ian and Ken for joining us remotely. To kick off today's discussion, Ian, I want to start with you. You spearheaded the precision medicine program at AbbVie and have been working in this field for more than 20 years. Have you seen the field evolve during your career? And what are you doing specifically here at AbbVie?
Well, thank you, Jane, and thanks all of you for joining us today to hear our thoughts on what we're doing in the precision medicine space at AbbVie. So to reflect on how things have changed and evolved over the last 20 years, I'd like to begin by discussing a little bit of what we're doing today to compare and contrast with the situation all of those years ago. So today at AbbVie, we have a very comprehensive precision medicine strategy that we apply across all of the programs in our portfolio in oncology, in immunology, and other therapeutic areas, married with companion diagnostic development, which happens in parallel. But to us, precision medicine means much more than just identifying patients, which is important. We're looking to bring robust pharmacodynamic analyses to all of our drugs so we can understand doses, bringing the correct dose to the correct patient. We look at mechanisms of action to understand whether we're having the desired effect on the mechanism with the drugs that we're bringing to patients, and also if that mechanism is having the desired effect on the disease that we're seeking to interdict. We look at mechanisms of resistance to try and inform us around new combinations and new insights into biology that can lead to new and important new targets and in turn transformative therapies of the future. And of course, we're looking for predictive markers at the foundation of precision medicine, trying to bring the right medicine to the right patients that we can define really precisely using companion diagnostic assays. That's a really core part of what we do. The way in which we get to these ambitious endpoints is using strong work in our discovery teams and our clinical teams, but also leveraging big data and data analytics so that we're using hundreds of thousands of patients of data with clinical phenotypes, imaging data, molecular genetics, and so on. So we can really understand the pathogenic drivers of disease and match the right mechanisms with the right diseases, with the right patients. This helps us a great deal in clinical development, advancing programs quickly to approvals, making decisions more data-informed, and accelerating development in general. But it also means a lot to patients in clinical practice, which is why it's important that we have strong and robust and innovative CDX approaches. And that's something that's at the very core of what we do also. So our differentiated approach, we have a great team. We have a really talented team. I think we have one of the most talented teams in the industry. We're always building that team. Our team is integrated across TAs with companion diagnostics so that we're always learning lessons from oncology, for instance, applying those to immunology and neuroscience and so on. All of our programs have precision medicine strategies with very strong support from our leadership, which is really strongly committed to bringing innovative, new, and transformative therapies to patients. And we see precision medicine as a fundamental part and important part of how we do that here at AbbVie. So how have things changed to get to this point? Back all those decades ago, we had the Human Genome Project had just been completed. We had genomes from a handful of individuals with a very limited understanding, of course, of the heterogeneity between individuals and associations between those molecular heterogeneities and diseases. We were really at the beginning of understanding human biology. Many years later, now we have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of genomes sequenced, all now associated with clinical outcomes and longitudinal data. So now we're really associating and understanding that heterogeneity with disease drivers, something that we can leverage importantly for precision medicine to tell us about patient populations to target our drugs to, and also new targets. We're not just rescuing trials anymore with precision medicine data. We're prospectively designing trials to bring medicines to patients that we think and we hypothesize strongly that will respond to our drugs. And the reason for this is all of the successes that we've had, particularly in oncology, where we've transformed as a field the treatment of some important cancers like lung cancer through insights into disease drivers and building therapies to address those drivers. And we're seeking at AbbVie to take all of this learning that's happened over the last 20 years and to apply it, continue to apply it in oncology. It's important to continue to do that, but also bringing those lessons to help advance the work that's already been done in immunology and neuroscience to the same place. So I think a lot has changed in 20 years, and I think we're poised at the precipice of really transforming some other disease areas in addition to oncology.
Great, thanks, Ian. It's amazing to hear how far the field has come over the past 2 decades since the Human Genome Project, and to hear your passion in the field of precision medicine. Anita, Ken, and Heath, turning to you, can you each share what precision medicine means to you and what inspired you to pursue a career in this field? Anita?
Thanks, Jane. Well, early in my career, I became interested in understanding why patients respond differently to drugs. I started my career working in a children's hospital, studying the underlying mechanisms of drug response. And I saw firsthand how important it was to tailor treatment regimens based on disease genetics, but also developmental stage of patients. So children, as they grow, they metabolize drugs differently, and young children might not respond to a drug as well as an older one might, or vice versa. From there, I got interested in genetic heterogeneity of tumors and the complexity of understanding, but even more importantly, of being able to predict which patients might benefit the most from a particular cancer therapy. And as a woman of South Asian background, it's important to me that we understand mechanistically whether a medicine is likely to work for someone like me or not. So to me, precision medicine is all about getting to that diversity by understanding which patients are likely to benefit for a therapy, as opposed to what we may think is going to work for the average patient.
No, that's great. What about you, Heath?
Thanks, Jane. I'm excited to be part of this important discussion today.
Great.
I started my graduate career in immunology, dissecting mechanisms that drive autoimmune diseases with the hope that we could find better treatments. Since then, I've had several family members develop lupus, including a friend's daughter who was only 13 at the time of her diagnosis. The disease is incredibly heterogeneous, with no 2 patients presenting with the same symptoms or disease manifestations, making it incredibly difficult to diagnose and treat. It was difficult for me to see friends struggle with the disease, And I knew that we as a scientific and medical community needed to do better to help patients.
Great, thanks. And what about you, Ken?
Thanks. First, let me say how glad I am to be here today. But for me, as a physician, I've seen the fear, frustration, and sometimes even desperation that comes with failed therapies. And this affects not only the patients themselves, but their families. On the other side, I've seen sometimes the elation that comes with treatments that do work. So I think we have to do better. We have to take the guesswork out of, matching patients with treatments that'll work for them. And I think the work that I do in companion diagnostics creates a roadmap of sorts. A companion diagnostic test lets us, determine the odds of success for a particular drug for a particular patient. And of course, patience is what it's all about. I always keep patients in mind when I come to work every day.
Thanks so much, Heath, Ken, and Ida, for sharing why this work is so important to you. Like many, my family and those closest to me have been affected by cancer. And Ida, what you shared completely resonates with me. I too, as an ethnically diverse woman with a keen interest in this field, know how important it is to understand what medicine would work and would not work. So thank you for sharing that. So this leads me to my next question. Anita, success in oncology is often cited as an example of what's possible in precision medicine. So where are we headed in this field? What are your thoughts?
Precision medicine has revolutionized oncology. Understandably, with cancer being a leading cause of death, so much work has already gone into understanding how genes influence the development, but also the treatment of various types of cancer. Developments in understanding of cancer biology, coupled with advances in the technology over the past 20 years, have really provided us a strong base for identifying biomarkers of response as well as new druggable targets. We're still at the beginning in terms of understanding the potential to transform how we diagnose patients and how we treat patients with personalized precision medicine. In the coming years, patients who can potentially benefit from precision medicine will grow as we use artificial intelligence and machine learning to uncover even more connections between genomic alterations, clinical and environmental factors, and responses. My team at AbbVie is focused on understanding these complex interplay of factors that affect how patients with cancer respond to various treatments, including the genetic heterogeneity of the tumor, as well as its interaction with the immune system of the patient. We're also evaluating drugs that target specific proteins that are expressed on the surface of certain tumors. And our hypothesis is that patients that express these proteins at significant levels will be most likely to benefit from these medicines.
That's great. Thanks, Anita. You highlighted the critical role the evolution of technology has played in identifying oncology biomarkers and druggable targets. So that leads me to my next question for Ken. How are biomarkers turned into companion diagnostics, and why are they so important to precision medicine?
Well, a companion diagnostic is really a biomarker test that we develop in such a manner that it's easy to incorporate into clinical practice to make better treatment decisions. In other words, well, at least right now, it's a diagnostic test linked specifically to a therapeutic drug. But the work behind the companion diagnostic begins with developing a deep understanding of disease biology. Now, in oncology, this is typically identifying a mutation that causes a tumor to develop. But sometimes we identify, a biomarker that's expressed on the surface of tumor cells that we can use to, deliver more specifically drug therapies. Companion diagnostics is a focus at AbbVie to identify patients most likely to respond to a therapeutic. We're using predictive biomarkers and ultimately companion diagnostics to help match patients with specific therapies. And of course, I think to do this, we're leveraging technologies beyond what we would consider to be traditional diagnostics. For some diseases, this means using biosensors or wearables and other technologies as well. I think, as Anita mentioned, we're also using machine learning and artificial intelligence to unravel complex databases, which include a myriad of clinical, molecular, and digital data. And finally, we're also investigating biomarkers in immuno-oncology. And this is probably the most sophisticated branch of precision medicine, because here not only do we have to understand the diversity of the tumor biology itself, but we also have to understand the diversity of host immune responses.
Great. As Ken shared, advances in companion diagnostics have played a key role in the success of precision medicine treatments, especially for oncology patients. Ian, what have recent successes in oncology shown us, and where do you think the field is headed?
Well, thanks, Jane. Those are some important insights from Ken and Anita. Maybe just to add to those, I think oncology has taught us that the disease is heterogeneous. I mean, oncology, perhaps because of the somatic changes that lead to tumors, it's more obvious. But there are also important disease level and tissue level changes that drive heterogeneity among patients with disease. So I think the first lesson is that patients are different. And I think more recently with the investigations, as Ken alluded to, in immuno-oncology, I think we're also learning the profound heterogeneity between patients with respect to their immune systems. I mean, I think the COVID pandemic has also shown us and provided insights into that too. So in oncology, we've learned that from immuno-oncology. We're learning it in immunology, and I think we can learn from some of those lessons. Rather than thinking of immune-related diseases as a disease, one disease, it's a disease with many different segments driven by heterogeneity in the immune system. I think from oncology, we've also learned that it's possible to bring those insights into clinical practice and into clinical development and change clinical practice quite easily. It's not necessarily simple to do, but it is possible to do it when you have compelling data associated with predictive markers. And I think when you look at the scope of what's been achieved in oncology over the last 20 years, even though we've been evolving with respect to technology and data, it's been remarkable, our understanding of disease. If you just look at lung cancer, for instance, I mean, it's not that long ago that we understood that lung cancer had a driver mutation in the EGFR gene, which led to the first targeted therapies there. That will be a lesson that will be applied in other disease areas. That foundational driver can change clinical practice, and we've learned so much about how EGFR mutations lead to resistance and next generation drugs and so on. And now with PD-L1, as Ken alluded to, we're really understanding the complexity of the host disease interaction, something which will be an important lesson for other therapeutic areas. So where are we going? I think a vision for precision medicine, it's easy to sort of look off into the future and envision a day when all patients have access to deep molecular understanding of both themselves as well as the disease that's driving the symptomology. And I don't think it's that far away, because I think we're really now getting to a place where the technologies can deliver that kind of understanding, that comprehensive understanding. We have profound insights into data analytics now that can help us tease apart relationships with response and segments of disease. So I think at some point in the future, we'll see decisions in the clinic at the patient physician level being driven by very deep and complex data that are made simple by artificial intelligence or machine learning or other tools that are being currently developed in parallel. I see a day when we'll all understand our own genetics, the meaningfulness with respect to risk of disease, and potentially see therapeutics applied earlier to patients that have high risk phenotypes or genotypes. So I see a future that's very data rich.
Great, thanks, Ian. You know, over the past decade, we've seen tremendous advancements in precision medicine for immune-mediated diseases, and many think that immunology is where the next big precision medicine innovation will occur. Heath, building on AbbVie's immunology experience, what is the company doing to expand the reach of precision medicine, specifically in the area of immunology?
Thanks, Jane. In the past 2 decades, we have learned so much in oncology about the molecular biology of cancer that has led to new treatments for patients. We're hoping to do the same in immunology because most of the available therapies treat diseases very broadly. We would like to get to a point where we can tailor treatments specifically to specific patient subpopulations. In addition, in immunology, we have an increasing number of therapies available for patients, but it's not always clear which medicine is the most appropriate for a clinician to prescribe to a patient. And so we're working on developing strategies to help clinicians be more informed so they can select the right drug for the right patient. We would like to change the way we develop new immunology drugs and make them more precise for each patient. If we can bring a new medicine that really makes a difference for, say, 30 to 40% of UC patients or patients with ulcerative colitis, that would have a significant positive impact for those individuals. Ulcerative colitis is a chronic disease of the large intestine, in which the lining of the colon becomes inflamed and the patients develop ulcers. It causes painful symptoms that can be severe and include diarrhea, abdominal pain and cramping, rectal pain and bleeding, fatigue, and urgent bowel movements. The cause of the disease is unknown, but research does point to a patient's genes and environment as possible factors, which aligns to precision medicine. Ulcerative colitis currently lacks a non-invasive disease monitoring tool to accurately measure disease activity and predict treatment outcomes. At AbbVie, we're trying to explore opportunities to work with inflammatory bowel disease experts across the world to use cutting-edge technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and digital biomarkers to develop new tools and help address this unmet need for these patients.
Great, thanks, Heath. You know, it's encouraging to hear about the promise of precision medicine, especially in an area like immunology and, you know, the work being done to develop tools for inflammatory bowel diseases. I want to now go to those joining us online and see what they have to say. So let's take a look. Great. So, you know, this comes from Jackie, where she shared that she was encouraged by, you know, recent developments in precision medicine beyond oncology, and looks forward to seeing how advancements in AI and machine learning will lead to even greater impact. And I think this speaks to a lot of what all of you have shared, just in terms of kind of where the field is heading and what we've seen in terms of the innovation that's happening in this field. Eleonora says that the future of medicine is precision medicine. You know, everyone who is in healthcare, whether in pharma or first line, must fully embrace this concept. So I don't know, Heath or Anita or anyone, would you guys like to comment on what Eleanor has shared?
I completely agree with that sentiment. I think we've made so many advances in oncology, but we still have a ways to go, right? And it's about how we're generating a lot of data now through sequencing every patient in our studies, through single cell sequencing. That's really a new technology that we've started to implement. So I think the trick then is to really be able to use all of this information to generate insights that will affect patient care, and that's where the machine learning and the AI applications become really important.
Great. So Ken, let me ask you, you recently joined AbbVie. You know, what is it about AbbVie that makes it an exciting place to be part of kind of what's happening here and what we're doing to advance the science of precision medicine?
Well, the goal here at AbbVie is precision medicine for every program. So we're really pushing the frontiers and trying to bring precision medicine to new therapeutic areas. Now, a lot of companies aspire to do the same, but what I see different here is the genuine commitment to make precision medicine a reality. It starts right at the top with senior management and permeates across the entire organization. And to do this, to make precision medicine a reality, it does take a village. And what AbbVie does very well is it brings together, clinical and translational scientists with a myriad of other expertise within R&D to generate and interpret very complex information.
That's great. Ian, is there anything else you would like to add to that? I know Ken is your newest member of your team and your leadership.
No, Ken makes some really terrific points and very salient points, even given his short time with us so far. Maybe just to add to that for the purposes of emphasis, I think the thing that struck me when I arrived at AbbVie is that the entire R&D organization, and actually the commercial organization too, is thinking about precision medicine and thinking how we can use the data. And so in addition to just strong collaborations, like the foundation of precision medicine, something that will be really important in immunology, has to happen really early in discovery. And we have discovery scientists in those therapeutic areas that when they are bringing forward the therapeutic candidates, they're also bringing forward candidate biomarkers and patient populations, which makes me very optimistic about the possibility of success. The other thing I will say too is on the clinical side, I was very heartened and surprised at the commitment on the clinical side, particularly in areas where precision medicine or targeting patient populations hasn't been very successful so far. A lot of commitment from those clinicians to do the experiment, right? Sometimes that's the first ceiling you've got to break through, is getting people compelled enough to want to try and do it in humans, because all the hypotheses in the world aren't going to matter unless we do the experiment in clinical trials. And we have clinicians who understand the data, who are really sophisticated in their understanding of precision medicine and very committed to do it. So maybe just to emphasize what Ken said, it's an organization that's very supportive and very thoughtful about precision medicine across the board.
Great. Thanks, Ian and Ken. I think, what you're sharing and, the exciting work that we're doing and how we're prioritizing this unique area of science is really important to share. So now I want to ask each of you, what is the formula for bringing precision medicine to more patients? And what do you think the field will look like in 10 years? So Heath, I'm going to start with you this time.
Thanks. In immunology, understanding the drivers of disease is critical because patients differ so widely in clinical presentation. We're beginning to build an atlas of diseases, mapping different diseases using different platforms to understand them from all directions. One of the challenges in immunology clinical trials is that a lot of endpoints are more subjective because we have to rely on patient-reported outcomes. I think in the next 10 years, the field will have made some considerable progress in removing some of that subjectivity.
All right, great. What about you, Anita?
Thanks, Jane. So understanding how each patient is unique, even within the same disease population, is critical for precision medicine success. Mm-hmm. Over time, I already talked about this a bit, we're acquiring more and more data to help inform our strategies. So the formula then is to be able to converge and mine these large multimodal data sets to generate insights that can be translated to the clinic for decision making to change the way that individuals receive care based on a holistic understanding of their genetic makeup, their immune system, as well as environmental factors.
All right, great. Ian, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I agree with Heath and Anita's points. I think they make some good points. I think big data and advanced analytics are critical to success. We're generating so much data now; it's impossible to analyze all of it. And I also love the idea that we can use machine learning, artificial intelligence, to tell us things we didn't sort of prospectively know, right? To tell us unexpected things and new insights into disease. I should also say and emphasize again that where we're going, at AbbVie, and I know elsewhere, the realization that these data can help us understand patients that may not have disease yet, maybe pre-cancer, patients with high-risk conditions, that we can bring therapies that work in the resulting cancer earlier and earlier into the treatment paradigm, so we can start thinking about functional cures. I just wanted to emphasize that again, because I see that as part of our vision of precision medicine, is trying to understand where we can bring therapies. We've got some examples in our own pipeline of that right now, and I know others are thinking about it, but I think it could make a big difference. I also would like to just add, if I may, that we're not just talking only about genetics or genomics. Those are very important parts of what we do. But in the immunology space, Heath's team is working very hard on a digital pathology platform to help us use images and use machine learning to use those images to tell us about heterogeneity of disease and potentially the underlying pathogenic drivers. So there's a lot of new stuff coming down the pipeline, and I think the future is very rosy for the ambition to bring precision medicine to every patient.
It's very exciting. And finally, we'll go to you, Ken. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the formula also requires shifting the paradigm somewhat from just developing drugs to developing complete solutions for patients. It's not simply about offering patients new therapeutic options anymore, but it's about helping to get the right patient on the right drug at the right time. And I also want to thank, I think it was Eleonora out there, for providing a segue to one of my talking points. 10 years from now, we won't be talking about precision medicine. It's just going to be the practice of medicine. That's the way it's going to be done. A couple of other things, we're also going to have to move the paradigm from drug diagnostic pairs, which is probably the current state of the art, to a more comprehensive diagnostic workup and algorithm that will predict the best drug for a particular patient. The one thing that I can't tell you is what the technologies will look like, because, technology is moving so fast. I think things are going to look, incredibly different 10 years from now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Who knows what kind of technology advancements we'll be talking about even in a few years, right? Not even just 10 years. So I want to spend the next few minutes going to the questions we're getting through the live audience chat. So let me take a quick look here. The first question comes from Kim, and this is for you, Anita. So you spoke a little bit about diversity kind of early on, but how do we ensure diversity in precision medicine research?
Kim, thank you for the question. There are several aspects to this. It's definitely about getting more diverse representation into clinical trials, but it's also about really understanding how a disease differs among diverse populations and diverse groups. In our Convergence initiative, which Ian spoke about briefly at the beginning, we're building an ecosystem of data from diverse geographies to help us understand the disease across diverse populations. So by understanding the underlying mechanistic diversity of the disease pathways, we can then enable better treatment decisions for all patients. And ultimately, our ability to treat a diverse patient population is only as good as the diversity of data that's going into our research efforts. So thank you, Kim.
That's great. So the next question comes from Nava, and this is for you, Ian. At what extent does artificial intelligence play a role in precision medicine?
That's a great question. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Nava. I think the answer is we don't know yet. I think we're really at the beginning of using those advanced tools to tell us about disease and to interpret data for us. But I think there's some early wins, right? I mean, some of the digital pathology tools I talked about were arguably the earliest inroads made by artificial intelligence. Machine learning has been in image analysis, and so digital pathology and radiological imaging have been areas where with artificial intelligence has made a big impact. But I think we're just at the very beginning of what I think will be an enormous impact. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Great. The next one is from Ashini, and this is for both Ken and Heath. Is the development of precision medicine in the conceptual stage or at the clinical stage? So let's start with Ken.
I think both, right? Precision medicine is already out there. I mean, if you just look at the number of targeted therapies in oncology, it's already being practiced. But I think precision medicine, for all the advances we've made, we're still in the infancy, right? I mentioned within the area of oncology, we need to move away from, thinking about these drug diagnostic pairs, to this more holistic diagnostic workup. And then, of course, we have to move this out of oncology, right? Precision medicine has been very successful in oncology, but I definitely believe there's a place for it in many other therapeutic areas.
Great. What about you, Heath?
Yeah, I agree with Ken and the points that he made. Oncology has by far made the most significant advances in precision medicine. In immunology, there are a couple of tools that are available, but there's still a long ways we have to go, both in thinking about how we diagnose patients, but also being able to develop tools that will enable us to identify what's the right drug for the right patient. Companies like AbbVie and others are, I think, making significant investments in trying to work with a lot of the leading experts to be able to tackle these problems. And I think that, the future of precision medicine and immunology is going to be very bright.
Great. So another question, this one is for Ian and Ken, and it's from Omid. It seems diagnostic science like biomarkers detection is priority to treatment. How can patients benefit from precision diagnostics technology? So Ian, let's start with you.
Well, I think there's a point that Ken made that is important and has a technology angle to it, and it's sort of best illustrated, I think, in the case of lung cancer, where patients are diagnosed with a core needle biopsy, often, sometimes even with a small amount of tissue from a fine needle aspirate, and the numbers of actionable mutations that can lead to life-extending treatments far exceeds what you can do with that small amount of tissue, which means that you need new technologies, or we needed new technologies to address all of this complexity. And that was served in lung cancer with next generation sequencing. So when one thinks about lung cancer and how technology has enabled diagnostics that can actually be used in the context of clinical practice, innovation in the sequencing space has made an enormous difference there. And I think whenever you now think about lung cancer, to the point that Ken made earlier, and bringing new diagnostics and new insights that are actionable to clinical practice, you need to think about combining that diagnostic test with all of the others in lung cancer, so that when you think of an individual patient, that patient doesn't necessarily care about whether they're MET positive or EGF positive or ALK positive. When they come in, they just want to know what they're positive for so they can get the right treatment. And that means comprehensive disease level diagnostics. So the technologies make a big difference, and it will become even more complex as we start to bring multimodal type analyses in to add to sequencing, such as imaging analysis and so on. So it's incumbent on us who care about getting therapies to patients to make sure that those technological innovations can take place in a way that's easy to use in the clinic, which is what Ken mentioned as an important part of a modern companion diagnostic development strategy.
Great. Thanks, Ian. And what about you, Ken?
Yeah, so first of all, I do want to re-emphasize companion diagnostics and precision medicine. It's all about the patient. We're trying to improve patient care. But I think the one other point, so far in this discussion, we've been talking about, AbbVie's role in all of this. I think one of the other things that needs to happen, right, is healthcare professionals really need to embrace this and actually use all of the tools that pharmaceutical and diagnostic companies are creating for them. And, I do want to acknowledge that that's a challenge, right? Because we're creating a lot of new information that's quite challenging for a healthcare professional, to digest. But we're really depending, right? Everything that we do in this area is all for naught, without the help and cooperation and dedication of all the healthcare professionals. And so again, I said before, and I'll mention her name again, Eleonora said, 10 years from now, we won't be talking about precision medicine. This will be the practice of medicine. And, it's all of those physicians, nurses, out in the community that's really going to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I know, Anita, you wanted to say something quickly.
Well, it was what Ian was talking about. I think that made a lot of sense to me. I wanted to just add to that in oncology, it's about that first treatment that a patient's going to get, but it's also so important for us to understand how the tumor is evolving over the course of the treatment and the patient's disease. And so diagnostics that enable us to continue to monitor that, those resistance mechanisms that the tumor is evolving are going to be so critical as we continue to improve the care for the patient.
Yeah, all right. So we have time for one last question, and this one is actually for you, Anita, and it comes from Andrew, who asks, so how does AbbVie envision deploying single-cell multi-omics sequencing platforms beyond oncology to further inform drug development? So that's a mouthful, but
yeah, that's a great question. So I think we're starting to employ it increasingly in the oncology space, especially in immuno-oncology applications, where we're really trying to understand not what's happening at the bulk tumor level, but specifically interactions between single cells. And so employing single cell sequencing, also things like spatial genomics, et cetera, to help us to understand what's happening within specific cells of the tumor and how those tumor cells are interacting with their environment. Having said that, I think we're already seeing applications in immunology and beyond to help us make decisions for assets as they're advancing in the pipeline. So maybe if Heath wants to jump in as well.
Sure, thanks, Anita. Yeah, I think in immunology, we've seen that in the past, a lot of the analyses have been done on bulk tissues, and that can only get us so far in terms of understanding the mechanisms that are driving disease or trying to identify predictive biomarkers. And so we've actually been working with Anita's group quite a bit to try and deploy some of these single cell types of analyses in our clinical trials so that we can really get a much deeper understanding of what our drugs are doing and what's driving the disease at a single cell level. And I think that's what's going to be required to really move the field forward in immunology and probably other areas as well.
That's great. Well, I think we can all agree that there is a lot of excitement going on in the field of precision medicine. So I want to thank our panelists again for sharing your experiences, the lessons learned, and thoughts on the future of medicine today. And to all of you for tuning in and adding to the conversation. We look forward to staying connected. I know we didn't get to all the questions, but we'll try to respond to those separately. And our journey to discover the formula for success in areas that will help forge scientific breakthroughs and innovation isn't over. So stay tuned for updates in our next episode of What's the Formula, where we continue the conversation. Thank you.
Hello?
Hi, can you guys hear us?
You should tell Ian that.
Yes.
Great job! So I just got the numbers from John. About 600 people tuned in to the live cast, and about